Hello, friends. I am glad to see you again. Today I will talk about the HOA that is demanding access to my lake house. I was deep as the lake asleep when my phone lit up like a distress flare at 2:07 a.m. The screen showed an unfamiliar number from the county over. Against my better judgment, I answered, thinking it might be an emergency neighbor call. Small town courtesy runs deep where my lake house sits. Instead, a nasal voice that reminded me of a squeaky screen door announced, "This is Cheryl, president of the Sunrise Shores Homeowners Association. Since you've abandoned your cabin for more than 30 days, title has reverted to the HOA. Be a peach and leave the keys under the mat before dawn." I blinked myself awake, replaying the sentence as if the words might line up differently on the second pass. "I'm sorry, who exactly are you, and what parallel universe did you borrow that policy from?" I said. Cheryl huffed, full bulldog snort. "We mailed the notice. You didn't contest. Therefore, the property is ours. Board's unanimous. Congratulations on contributing to the community." She actually waited, as though expecting applause. Now a quick sidebar. The cabin had belonged to my grandmother. 2 years ago, after she passed, I poured half my savings and more elbow grease than any corporate project ever demanded into bringing the cedar-clad place back to life. It's the only spot where I can breathe without hearing city traffic or Slack pings. And apparently it was tasty prey for an HOA I had never heard of until that phone call. While Cheryl continued yammering about deadlines and lock changes, my brain sprinted through the chain of title. The parcel sits outside the Sunrise Shores subdivision proper. My land was deeded in the 1950s before anyone dreamed of carving cul-de-sacs into the ridge. My address isn't even on their road, yet here was Cheryl invoking an abandonment clause, claiming that if a house sits vacant more than 30 consecutive days, the HOA can seize it for community use. Something about turning it into a wellness retreat. That's not how adverse possession works, not in any state, and certainly not in mine, which requires at minimum 5 years of open and notorious occupation plus taxes paid. 30 days? Not a chance. I told Cheryl exactly that. Her reply? "Guess you'd better brush up on the bylaws. You have until sunup." Then she hung up. I lay there staring at the ceiling fan. Part of me wanted to ignore the insanity until morning coffee, but the adrenaline refused. I threw on jeans, packed a thermos, slung my grandfather's beat-up legal binder into the passenger seat, and started the 90-minute drive to the lake. The 2-lane was empty except for deer and my high beams. The moon rippled over the water when I rolled in around 4. Everything looked normal. Dock lights humming, my paddleboards chained where I'd left them on my last visit 5 weeks earlier. 5 weeks, that was it. My day job had exploded with quarter-end audits and I couldn't get away. Far cry from abandonment. I unlocked the door, flipped switches, inhaled pine and dust. Then I saw the envelope taped to the fridge. HOA letterhead printed on home office inkjet, dated 2 weeks prior. Inside, a single page with comically tiny type claimed legal right to enter, citing Article 17, subsection D, abeyance of dormant properties. They had scheduled a key turnover ceremony for tomorrow. Well, technically today now, at 9 a.m. attendance, strongly encouraged. I laughed so loudly the rafters echoed. Sunrise Shores HOA must have mistaken the county recorder's office for a suggestion box. Still, I'm a big believer in documentation, so I took photos of everything, timestamped them, and emailed copies to a Gmail folder called HOA Nonsense. The sun wasn't up yet, but my next move was obvious. Call my friend Jordan. She's an attorney who once wrestled a golf course HOA into submission over a misplaced fence. I texted, "Emergency cabin situation. Are you awake?" A minute later, the typing dots appeared. "Can be, what's up?" I summarized. Jordan replied with 3 words. "They're bluffing." Then a 4th. "Coming. She lives only 40 minutes out." I brewed stronger coffee and drafted a bullet list. Dates of ownership, property tax receipts, my grandmother's will, my renovation permits, anything Jordan might need to torpedo the HOA's fantasy. At 6 a.m. sharp, headlights bounced across the gravel. Jordan stepped out in sneakers and a blazer that screamed courtroom even at dawn. We compared notes over the kitchen island. "They're banking on intimidation," she said, skimming the letter. "No legal basis. Also, this clause totally fabricated." She snapped a photo as evidence of attempted fraud in writing. Her plan? Meet the HOA delegation at 9, record everything, serve them with a cease and desist, and file for an injunction if needed. I asked if I should change the locks preemptively. Jordan grinned. "Absolutely. and post no trespassing signs makes any entry criminal. I drove to the hardware store in the next town the moment it opened, bought deadbolts, laminated signs, and 4 motion-activated cameras that upload straight to the cloud. By 8:30, every entry had fresh hardware and bright red warnings. If Cheryl wanted keys, she'd get a brand new set, with nothing to unlock. 9 o'clock. A convoy of 3 SUVs crunched up the drive like a suburban parade. Out stepped Cheryl in a pastel power suit, flanked by 2 men and another woman juggling a clipboard. They all wore plastic name badges, Sunrise Shores HOA board, to lend gravity. Jordan and I met them on the porch. I hit record on my phone without apology. Cheryl held out an envelope. "The deed transfer documents. We'll handle filing." She peered at the shiny deadbolt. "You changed the locks? Funny what property owners do," I said. Jordan introduced herself. Cheryl's confidence flickered, but she forged on. "Per Article 17. Jordan cut her off. "Article 17 doesn't exist in any recorded bylaws. We pulled them from the Secretary of State's database this morning. Present a legitimate statute or leave." Cheryl flushed crimson. One of her board mates, an accountant type named Lowell, cleared his throat. "We're simply exercising our right to dormant property conversion." Jordan raised an eyebrow. "You mean adverse possession? You need 5 continuous years of hostile occupancy, plus taxes. Even then, you have to quiet title in court. You're missing about 4.5 years. Lowell muttered something about amended provisions. Jordan handed him the cease and desist. "You set foot here again without invitation. We'll seek punitive damages." Cheryl's bravado melted. She resorted to threats about liens for unpaid assessments. I invited her to send any invoice. Jordan promised countersuit for harassment. The board retreated to their SUVs amid my new cameras snapping away. But Cheryl wasn't done. That afternoon, I discovered a post on the Sunrise Shores Community Forum, publicly accessible, declaring my cabin under reclamation and unsafe. Neighbors were warned to report any activity. Comments poured in, some supportive, others gleefully speculating about turning the place into a clubhouse. Jordan and I screenshotted everything. Defamation adds spice to a civil complaint. Plot twist number 2 arrived via voicemail from the county permitting office. Anonymous report claiming my seawall violated environmental codes, demanding immediate inspection. Nice try, Cheryl. Everything had been inspected and signed off last year. I scheduled the inspector anyway, knowing it would boomerang on them when the report came back spotless. Day shifted to evening. We grilled burgers on the deck and traded theories about Cheryl's motive. Jordan believed the HOA coveted lake frontage to boost property values. I suspected personal spite. Maybe someone got rejected when Grandma refused easement decades ago. The next morning, I drove to the county clerk to file a police report for attempted property theft and harassment, attaching all evidence. The deputy, a tall guy named Arlen, took it seriously. He'd fielded complaints about Sunrise Shores before, mostly minor power grabs, but nothing this brazen. He agreed to patrol the area more often. While in town, I visited the library's archive room. I hunted old plats and found a dusty map from 1974 clearly indicating my parcel outside any HOA boundary. Sweet historical ammo. Back at the cabin, Jordan drafted a strongly worded letter to every board member, citing statutes, demanding retraction of the forum statement, and reminding them that SLAPP laws make defamation expensive. We mailed physical copies via certified mail. Paper trails are a lovely thing. That evening, a silver truck idled at the driveway. The driver, a gray-bearded man, lifted a hand in greeting. "Name's Hank. I'm on the HOA Architectural Committee. Mind if we talk?" I met him halfway down the path but kept my phone recording. Hank's voice was low. "Look, I disagree with Cheryl's stunt. She's been gunning for your place since the board expansion. Claims shoreline should be common space. I voted no, but she railroaded the meeting while you were absent. I asked why no one alerted me sooner." He shrugged, a mix of resignation and guilt. "She said you were unreachable. Then she bounced around the 30-day clause. Nobody had time to verify. Folks bought it." Hank revealed another nugget. Sunrise Shores was on the brink of a special assessment crackdown. Cheryl saw my cabin as a golden ticket, a property she could brandish as a community center to justify higher dues. Absurd but plausible when you're dealing with people who taste power for the first time. I thanked Hank for his honesty and asked if he'd be willing to sign an affidavit. He agreed, on the condition his name stay off the neighborhood gossip mill until necessary. The seawall inspection happened the following day. The county inspector, a cheery woman named Maya, admired the craftsmanship and signed off. "That anonymous report wasted 2 hours of my schedule," she said, rolling her eyes. I promised to let her boss know she was professional. Meanwhile, Jordan filed a police complaint for false report. We suspected Cheryl, but phones and routers leave breadcrumbs. The sheriff's office subpoenaed the forum logs to trace the IP. Things escalated on Wednesday night. I was cataloging Granny's recipe box when motion alerts pinged my phone. The driveway camera captured 3 silhouettes creeping toward the front steps, flashlights shrouded with red cellophane. I dialed 911 while flipping the outside floodlights with my phone app. The would-be trespassers froze like raccoons. Sirens arrived within minutes. Arlen again. He detained them, 2 teenagers, and incredibly, Lowell, the accountant board member. In the bed of Lowell's pickup sat bolt cutters and a case of spray paint. Lowell babbled excuses. They were there to hang community notices at midnight with bolt cutters. Arlen wasn't buying it. He arrested Lowell for trespassing and possession of burglary tools, cited the teens, and impounded the truck as evidence. By sunrise, news of the arrest had traveled through the grapevine. Cheryl fired off a public statement claiming Lowell acted independently and that the HOA condemned his behavior. She still insisted I was obligated to relinquish keys under the so-called 30-day clause. Jordan replied by filing a temporary restraining order against Cheryl personally, citing credible threat. We now had harassment, defamation, attempted break-in, and bogus environmental complaints, all traceable to the same small group. A civil suit was inevitable. Friday morning at the county courthouse we filed. The clerk flipped through the packet, an inch thick. "You folks brought receipts," he said, affixing the official stamp. Court date scheduled for 6 weeks. Summer just got interesting. That afternoon, Hank called to report the HOA board's emergency meeting had devolved into shouting. Several homeowners demanded Cheryl resign. She refused, citing the bylaws, real ones this time, that required a 2/3 vote. A recall petition began circulating. While the neighborhood ate itself, I focused on repairs and enjoying my lake house. But I wasn't done with Cheryl yet. The following Monday, I met with investigative journalist Kara Brewster from the regional paper. She loves a good David versus Petty dictator story. I handed her the stack of documents. Her eyes widened as she read. "Mind if I confirm details and run a piece?" she asked. "We keep sources anonymous if you want." I agreed. The article published online Tuesday evening. Headline: Local HOA president accused of illegal land grab and harassment. It went semi-viral, shared by every homeowner rights group within a 12-state radius. Comment sections roasted Cheryl to a crisp. The reputational hit landed harder than any legal brief. By Thursday, Hank texted me a photo. Cheryl's for sale sign hammered into her own lawn. The board appointed an interim president pending elections. Lowell pled out to misdemeanor trespass and paid fines plus community service, ironically removing graffiti at the lake park. Still, I wanted permanent assurance. 2 weeks later, Jordan and I attended the HOA's open meeting. First time in its history, an outsider had shown up. We sat in the front row. The new acting president, a soft-spoken software engineer named Valerie, began with apologies. "We acknowledge wrongdoing," she said, voice trembling into the microphone. "The association will cease any claim on the property known as Lot 7A, and we will cooperate fully with law enforcement." Jordan rose to speak during the public comment period. She outlined my upcoming civil case, requesting a settlement discussion. Eyes widened around the room. Valerie asked for a recess. 40 minutes later, we had a written offer, full retraction, public apology, reimbursement of my legal fees, and an HOA donation of $25,000 to the county library, Granny's favorite charity. In exchange, I would drop personal claims against individual board members except Cheryl and Lowell. We countered. Include Cheryl's resignation from any HOA or civic board for 5 years, plus a personal apology letter. They accepted. Cheryl wasn't present, likely hiding under a Pinterest throw blanket, but the board had the authority to finalize. As I left the meeting, several homeowners approached to shake my hand. Many hated the HOA's climate of fear, but never believed they could fight back. One woman, tears in her eyes, whispered, "You reminded us this is still America." The civil suit against Cheryl and Lowell proceeded. Discovery unearthed delicious tidbits. Cheryl had orchestrated fake forum accounts to bully dissenters, and Lowell had used HOA funds to buy surveillance equipment. Their insurance balked, leaving them personally liable. Mediation eventually produced a settlement. They paid me a combined $60,000 in damages, lost their board positions, and were banned from HOA involvement for a decade. With that money, I set up the Granny K Lakeside Scholarship for local teens pursuing trades: carpentry, electrical, plumbing. Felt fitting to channel spite into opportunity. Summer ended with a bonfire on my dock. Friends gathered, string lights swaying. Jordan toasted marshmallows and laughed. All because they thought 30 days was long enough to steal a house. I looked at the cabin, its windows glowing amber, secure behind the locks they'd tried to breach. My property, my sanctuary, and thanks to a ridiculous 2 a.m. phone call, a reminder that standing your ground, backed by actual law, still wins against paper tiger tyrants. I honestly thought the drama had run its course once Cheryl's yard sprouted a for sale sign and Lowell was busy scraping graffiti off park benches in an orange vest. By late September, the lake lay placid again, its surface broken only by migrating geese and the occasional bass ripple. I settled into a rhythm: work in the city, Monday through Thursday, drive up Thursday night, spend long weekends sanding trim, reading mystery novels on the dock and watching winter creep down the tree line one maple at a time. The new HOA board kept its head down. Valerie, the interim president, sent me a certified letter formally disclaiming any present or future interest in my parcel. She also enclosed a fruit basket gift card and a handwritten apology that used the words "egregious overreach" twice. I framed it and hung it over the fireplace next to Grandma's canoe paddle. Jordan and I celebrated the hat-trick win: cease and desist, settlement, scholarship fund, over wood-fired pizza in town, and she swore the cabin had officially earned a spot in her personal War Stories Hall of Fame. "It's the rare case that ends before my coffee goes cold," she joked. By Thanksgiving, snow powder dusted the roof, and I figured the saga would live on only as a campfire story. Turns out, that was wishful thinking. In early January, I received a glossy tri-fold brochure tucked into my mailbox, the kind printed on thick linen stock that smells faintly of money. Across the front, Blue Ridge Serenity Resort and spa coming soon to your lakeshore. Inside, artist renderings showed infinity pools yawning over water I recognized immediately. My dock was right there, hand-drawn but unmistakable, cedar railing and all, labeled Proposed Meditation Pier. A microfont in the corner read "Conceptual Only. Final design subject to acquisition of contiguous shoreline parcels." I stared at it until my coffee went cold anyway. That evening, my cell rang with a number sporting the same area code as the brochure's return address. Against better judgment, déjà vu, anyone? I answered. "Good evening," came a syrup-smooth baritone. "Is this the owner of the lakeside property adjacent to Sunrise Shores? Depends who's asking." "Jackson Avery. I'm acquisitions counsel for Atlantic Land and Leisure. We're assembling parcels for an eco-wellness retreat. Your lot is key to ensuring environmentally conscious shoreline stewardship. We'd like to present an above-market cash offer." I already knew nothing that started with eco-wellness ended eco-friendly. Nevertheless, I asked for a number. He named a figure roughly twice the county's assessed value. Tempting at a glance, but less than I'd already invested in renovations, sweat, and memories. I told him thanks, but no thanks. Jackson's charm thinned. "There are other avenues, including cooperation with local governance. I'd hate for relationships to sour over a misunderstanding of fair value. Translation? We have lawyers, too." I ended the call and rang Jordan. She let out a whistle. "Developers don't use kid gloves unless they see a bigger hammer behind them. Keep everything documented, and call me if anyone shows up with a clipboard." Clipboard arrival took all of 4 days. I'd worked remotely that Friday, laptop perched on the breakfast bar, when a metallic clunk came from the yard. Peering through the front window, I saw 2 surveyors in neon vests planting a stake with a bright plastic ribbon 3 feet inside my property line. The stake bore Atlantic Land and Leisure's stylized AL2 logo. I stepped outside, phone recording. "State your business." The younger one adjusted her reflector pole. "We're marking prospective easements for future infrastructure, ma'am. So you're trespassing," I corrected. She blinked. Her partner, older and already sunburned despite January's pale sun, cleared his throat. "We were told this parcel fell under Sunrise Shores covenants now. Standard preliminary work." "Wrong parcel, wrong covenants, wrong decade," I said, pointing at my laminated no trespassing sign. "Remove the stakes, leave." They complied, mumbling about bad paperwork as they retreated to their truck. I photographed their plates, emailed Jordan, and phoned Deputy Arlen. He filed yet another trespass report. That weekend, Valerie called me, voice shaky again. She just sat through a board presentation by, you guessed it, Atlantic Land and Leisure. The developer dangled promises of a community pool, upgraded roads, and a founder's equity stake for early supporters. The catch: they needed the HOA to secure lakefront unification, meaning my dock, plus a neighbor's fishing shack further down the shore, both outside HOA lines. Several board members are smitten, Valerie admitted. They want to lobby the county for a special lakeshore overlay district. Eminent domain talk floated. My eyebrows shot halfway into my hairline. They can't invoke eminent domain. They're not a municipality, Valerie exhaled. Like Cheryl, they're hoping intimidation will do the trick. I'm holding the line, but I'm one vote, she paused. Here's the kicker. You won't believe who's consulting for them. Don't say it. Cheryl, she said, same pastel suits, new business cards, community integration specialist. I thanked her for the heads up and promised reinforcements. First order of business, intelligence gathering. I dove into public records and found Atlantic Land and Leisure's recent projects. In a neighboring state, they'd bulldozed a marsh to build lakeside condos, been fined 6 figures for violating wetland protections, and settled class action suits over faulty wastewater systems. Not exactly serenity incarnate. Second order, coalition. I contacted the Blue Heron Alliance, a grassroots conservation nonprofit known for stopping a limestone quarry last summer. Their director, a no-nonsense biologist named Dr. Tessa Holt, met me for diner coffee and reviewed my documentation. We love a good developer showdown, she said, especially one that bullies private owners. She agreed to testify if needed. Third, proactive defense. Jordan drafted letters to Atlantic's CEO, Jackson Avery, Cheryl, and the HOA board, reminding them of prior settlement terms. Cheryl had signed a non-interference clause, and warning that any attempt at eminent domain through subterfuge would be met with immediate injunctions and, if necessary, referral to the state attorney general. We didn't have to wait long to see if they'd blink. Late February brought the county zoning board's quarterly hearing. Item 5 on the agenda: proposal to create Lakeshore Resort Overlay District, LRO'd, allowing mixed-use hospitality development. I nearly laughed at the abbreviation. LROD sounded like a medical condition. Jordan and I arrived early, armed with printed exhibits: the trespass report, developers' wetlands violations, Cheryl's settlement agreement, and a map proving my parcel lay outside HOA boundaries. Dr. Holt came with color-coded charts showing endangered mussel habitats that would be smothered by resort boat traffic. The hearing room filled with residents, some lured by promises of property value spikes, others clutching Save Our Lake signs. The board chair, an engineer by trade, called the meeting to order. Atlantic's representatives spoke first, extolling mindful development and holistic healing amenities. Jackson Avery wore a suit that probably cost my monthly mortgage. He referenced a public-private partnership with local stakeholders and handed out new brochures, this time featuring a rooftop yoga deck where my grandmother's lilac bushes currently bloom. When public comment opened, Cheryl strode to the podium in a lavender blazer. She claimed the community desperately needed the resort's tax revenue and insisted certain underutilized properties should contribute to the common good. She glanced my way but avoided eye contact. My turn. I introduced myself, reminded the board of last year's attempted land grab, and presented evidence that Atlantic had hired a consultant, I gestured toward Cheryl, currently subject to a 5-year civic board ban, per her own settlement. Gasps rustled the room, followed by a low murmur. Jordan took the mic next, reciting statutory language on eminent domain and overlay districts. She noted that the state constitution requires any taking to be for public use, not private hotel profits. Then she dropped the wetland violation fines like lead weights onto the lectern. Dr. Holt finished the fusillade with laminated pictures of baby herons nesting in shoreline reeds. Replace this with jet ski docks, and you crush a regional ecosystem, she said. The board chair thanked us, shuffled papers, and asked Atlantic's team if they wished to rebut new information. Jackson's smile tightened. He requested a short recess. When they returned, he announced they would withdraw the overlay proposal to incorporate valuable community feedback. Translation: retreat, regroup, lick wounds. Cheryl slipped out a side door before the gavel fell. We celebrated at the diner again, pie all around. But Jordan cautioned against victory laps. Developers rarely walk away permanently. They'll probe a new angle. Sure enough, a week later I received a friendly letter from the county assessor noting a routine reevaluation of my property tax, prompted by anticipated rezoning activity. The new valuation tripled last year's number. My cabin renovations didn't justify half that. Jordan suspected Atlantic's fingerprints and requested the assessor's work papers through a Public Records Act request. Turned out the valuation had relied on planned resort amenities as a comparables base, a blatant speculation method the state appraisal manual explicitly forbids. The assessor reversed course within days, citing clerical error. Hearing rumors that Atlantic Land and Leisure was buying Sunrise Shores houses through Shell LLCs to sway the recall, Valerie panicked. I called Hank, the shy architect, and he sent a spreadsheet. 6 deeds filed to Sunrise Ridge Investments 1A LLC, all tied to Atlantic. Classic board stacking. We answered with an open meeting in the overcrowded hall. Dr. Holt projected the data. Jordan explained the shell game. Hank gave dates, and I played audio of surveyors admitting Atlantic lied about boundaries. When neighbors saw their docks redrawn as a yoga deck, 2 pending sales collapsed, another seller froze voting rights, and Atlantic's pipeline dried up. Cheryl fought back with a wine and cheese gala, bragging my cabin was inevitable. Hank went undercover and brought back every boast. Election day arrived in cold rain. Volunteers verified IDs. Sham proxies were tossed. Final count, Cheryl 34, Challenger 118. Her developer allies also lost. Umbrella inverted, lavender blazer flapping. She splashed off while Valerie accepted the presidency and handed Hank the gavel. Cheryl's parting gift was a small claims suit demanding 10 grand. Jordan laughed. We countersued for malicious prosecution. The judge dismissed her claim and ordered her to pay my fees, comparing her evidence to soap bubbles in a windstorm. Jordan's complaint and Dr. Holt's files triggered the Attorney General. Subpoenas rained, investors spooked, and Atlantic stock slid 8%. Jackson Avery phoned to warn that my stubbornness would hurt everyone. I told him I'd keep both my lake and my conscience and hung up. By spring, Atlantic withdrew from every deal, blaming market conditions. The overlay district died, and the county hired Dr. Holt to write a conservation plan. The HOA passed an amendment requiring 80% approval for any future overlay. Hank celebrated by carving a cedar sign, Kay's Landing Esther 1957, and mounting it beside the motion light. Summer brought bluegrass and barbecue. We raised $18,000 for the Granny K Scholarship. Deputy Arlen outbid the mayor on a sunset painting. Valerie offered me honorary HOA membership. I accepted goodwill but skipped the dues. 2 quiet seasons passed. The scholarship funded 4 kids, including Vic, a 19-year-old electrician who rewired the cabin. Life shrank to dawn paddles and cedar smoke, until Arlen arrived with a subpoena. The Attorney General wanted grand jury testimony. Jordan gave me a binder and told me to stick to facts. I showed jurors the brochure labeling my dock Meditation Pier. No one likes organized bullies. Their faces said everything. 2 weeks later, indictments for Atlantic's CEO, 3 VPs, Cheryl and Lowell. Cheryl flipped first, trading emails for leniency. Lowell followed after expense reports surfaced. Atlantic's lawyers tried to subpoena my security footage and even drafts of my mystery novel. Judge Starkweather declined. Victims shall not be harassed. In March, Atlantic signed a consent decree, admit wrongdoing, pay $12 million restitution, restore wetlands, and dissolve every Shell LLC. Cheryl got probation and a 15-year board ban. Lowell repaid the HOA and scrapes algae as community service. Victory felt good, yet invasive milfoil creeping toward the cove reminded me lawsuits aren't shields. With Dr. Holt's land trust, I wrapped all 5 acres and 50 feet of shoreline in a conservation easement. No subdivision, no commercial sale, ever. Vic installed solar path lights while we mapped boundaries. Feels good wiring a place nobody can pave, he said. Exactly 3 years after Cheryl's call, I signed the easement beneath the white oak. Valerie, Hank, Arlen, Dr. Holt, Jordan, and neighbors pressed thumbprints beside the ink. Witness signatures weren't required, Jordan whispered, but they make history warmer. At the HOA cookout, I finished the tale. If someone wakes you at 2 a.m. claiming your house, they're probably wrong, but you'll still need friends, receipts, and guts. Laughter rolled across the lawn. Hank pointed to the dock light's glow. Looks like a lighthouse, he said. That spring also brought one final bit of poetic justice. The state suspended Atlantic's contractors' licenses, citing systemic disregard for environmental law. Their flagship resort 2 states over stalled, investors fled, and the company filed for restructuring. Newspapers called it a slow-motion implosion, and every article mentioned the tiny lake community that first blew the whistle. Closer to home, the HOA used settlement money to plant shoreline buffer gardens, hire high school lifeguards, and replace the rickety community pier with a timber frame Vic wired for low-voltage lighting. The same neighbors once dazzled by resort brochures now brag about frog chorus counts and night skies bright with stars instead of hotel neon. I mounted the bronze plaque, Kay's Landing, conserved in perpetuity, for those who cherish wild water and honest neighbors. Drivers sometimes stop to read, then turn when they see nothing for sale. That's the point. A prank call morphed into trespass, lawsuits, indictments, and finally a promise, in cedar and bronze, that no brochure will erase. Friends, thank you. See you soon.